I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people, we're back in the building. You know what time it is. You already know what it is, G. We are here today. Now, before we obviously dive into everything, guys, please make sure you smash that like button. And also, if you guys can please subscribe to the channel if you are, you know, Liverpool, underwhelming, poor, catastrophic at times. You know, it was one of them kind of seasons. And I think that a lot of us will probably agree, you know, we're kind of happy to see the back end of this season, and hopefully, you know, things will change moving into the next season. Now, obviously, looking at this season as a whole, if you guys have watched my player ratings and awards, you know, I spoke basically, you know, about the season. I gave my kind of review, you know, in terms of the season in that regards, you know, where I've, you know, players I thought did okay, you know, how I felt about the manager and all that kind of stuff. But you guys already know, if you've watched my channel, if you've seen me on other channels, you already know my kind of feelings on the club as a whole, to be honest with you. You know, from top to bottom, I just think in these last couple of years, it's just not really, doing well, so to speak. But I think certain things have then been able to mask over that. You know, maybe we've not been as harsh. Maybe that's the case. Maybe we've just not been as harsh. Maybe we've settled for the mediocrity. And what I mean by mediocrity is not necessarily just because you're not winning everything all the time, because that's going to be a little bit unrealistic. Well, it's unrealistic for certain teams. You know, not every team could win everything. Not every team necessarily has the facilities to do so. And I feel like we kind of fall almost in the middle of that, where we do have the facilities to be able to do so, but at the same time, it's probably a bit of a stretch and a bit of a reach to then expect that we always do it. You know, like a Manchester City, for example, you know, a team that are forever fighting at the top end of the table, even when, you know, they have their drop-offs. Their drop-offs are, you know, I think Pep Guardiola in his first season, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure he finished third, you know, first season. Imagine first season he finished third, you know, in the league, but I think that was the freak season. And then since then, it's always been second. Even when we finished so far ahead of them, you know, in the league, it was to finish second, you know. And I think during that period of time where it was only Manchester City and Liverpool who were really, you know, battling and stuff like that, you know, it was called, you know, the old Manchester United, Arsenal, you know, not really anybody else kind of coming into the mix, and, you know, all these kind of various different things and all these different components. That's not what, I'll speak for myself, that's not necessarily what I'm suggesting. I think what we're just all suggesting is, if the club were to, as a whole, again, from top to bottom, if the club were to act like we were trying to be this big club that we say that we are, I don't think people would moan so much, because the reality is, if you do everything within your power to win, you know, you've done every single thing, whether that be on the pitch, the training, you know, behind the scenes, you know, with the transfer, if you've done everything, no one, it'll be very difficult for someone to then argue and say, oh, but we could do this. I mean, there's always things you can improve upon, especially if you're not winning, but it'll be the moaning wouldn't be so much, shall we say. And I think that's just where we're at the moment with Liverpool Football Club. Now, today's video, I just wanted to have a little talk, just about, you know, the exit strategy of some players, and obviously where I think, and again, just my own personal opinion, where I think the improvements can be potentially made heading into next season. So big up yourselves, guys. Thank you for joining in. So obviously we'll look at the league table, you know, how it ended, you know, for us. We'll look at the top half anyway. You know, Manchester City, you know, finishing on 89 points. Arsenal only 5 points behind them, which is very, very good. I know we banter Arsenal and we banter the fans, obviously, in terms of people like, you know, saying they bottled it and all that kind of stuff. And I guess there's a case for and against, you know, in regards to that. But to finish only 5 points behind City is still good. I think looking at it and saying, "Oh, but Liverpool were always in tight race. We finished a point behind this many times." Blah blah blah. That's also good. Do you know what I mean? That is also good. But I don't remember Liverpool going from, would I say, maybe 17, 18 actually, maybe 17, 18, where we finished so far off Manchester City to then only finish, a point behind them in the 18, 19 season, whilst obviously then winning, the Champions League. But they were, Arsenal, it didn't really look like they were going to have, at the beginning of the season anyway, I didn't think they were going to be this high. I did have them third, to be fair, third or fourth in the league. I thought they would get Champions League football. And they've improved, they've, progressed. I also didn't think that Liverpool would finish fifth. I think I had them down as second. I always said Manchester City will win the league. That's almost a foregone conclusion. But to say that Liverpool would finish fifth, 67 points, 22 points behind Manchester City, not after the season that we had last year. I didn't think it would be that. I thought we'd finish almost like in Arsenal's position where it would be like a 5-point gap, 5 at minimum. I thought, yeah, Man City would probably end up clearing it, but it won't be crazy, So, and I think one of the other things that when people are talking about, their predictions, obviously for next season, and we'll be back and blah, blah, blah. I think one of the things that people underestimate is that back then when we were challenging and stuff like that, there wasn't anybody. Like there genuinely wasn't anybody who was really improving that much. There wasn't a Brighton or a Villa or a Newcastle kind of thing. Man United were kind of thereabouts, but those other teams weren't really doing well. Newcastle, relegation battles. Brighton just come up, so they weren't really doing nothing. Villa, again, it was the Jack Grealish kind of hype, and I think we weren't really in that kind of position where you could say, I'm not saying Brighton or Villa or even Newcastle would potentially win the league next season, but what I am saying is that they've improved so much, especially in this season, where I think if they were just to be able to build upon that, again, Brentford, Fulham, all playing well this season, taking points off, some of the bigger teams, Chelsea doing so shit as well. I think next season, certain teams are going to surprise a lot of us because I just feel that we're underestimating a lot of these teams. Do you know what I mean? It's not only just the sheer fact that we finished, 22 points behind Manchester City. It's the sheer fact that there's 3 teams taking out City. There's 3 teams ahead of us. When we won the league, if you look here at the league table, when we won the league, look at that. Look how far Manchester City, were behind us in that season. Look how, like, they were, 17, 18 points behind us kind of thing. So then you're just like, okay, 18 points behind us, but there's no one else in front of them but us. Look at Manchester United, look at Chelsea, look at Leicester City, look how far they are to Manchester City, to then even Manchester United finished 33 points. Like these teams weren't there. But then you look at the league table now, these teams are now here and they're getting a little bit closer. So to say that Liverpool, I'm not saying that I think Liverpool will improve, do you know what I mean, in terms of the overall performance next season, but to say that we can just underestimate all these other teams, I think that's a little bit dangerous for me personally. But again, each to their own. So we'll just have to wait and see. But looking ahead towards next season, one of the things I was saying, I was like, there's a few things I think that Liverpool need in order for us to improve. Now, obviously, I've done a little like checklist kind of thing. I was like, these are the kind of things that I'm looking at. Obviously, there's other things potentially that could be added into this mix. This isn't like, oh, this is the only things that we need to do in order for us to improve. But these are some of the things. So one of the things I've got here is sort out the backroom staff. So I'm talking about obviously potentially the sporting director, the doctor situation. I don't know if we sorted that out or not. Yeah, just everything that's going on behind the scenes, the owners, are we selling, are we back, all of that kind of crap, sort that out. Get rid of the deadwood. Get rid of players that are not necessarily in the manager's plans. If they're not in the plans, no problem. Got no beef with that. If you feel that they need to go, then let's just get rid of them. Let's actively try to sell some of these players instead of just keeping them around. Value going down, can't really sell them, and if you do sell them, you're selling them at crappy prices, and blah blah blah, all of that kind of thing. Next up, I've got sign the right profile of player. Obviously, I'm going to dive into everything anyway. Sign the right profile of player. Again, the quantity for me isn't the major thing. Yes, I've got a number, would I say necessarily in my head of, okay, if you get the right profile of player, this is how many signings I think it will take in order for us to get back to a position where I'm like, okay, we can challenge. I don't see any scenario where I think Liverpool will win, but just that we can at least challenge. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Looking into training methods, I should have put this at the top, because this has to be one of the main things that Liverpool as a whole need to look at. Jurgen Klopp, Pep Yinders, the rest, all of them, Kravitz, the whole nine. They need to look at this, because this will hamper Liverpool regardless of who we sign. You could sign Modric, you could sign Cruz, Pedri, Gavi, Musiala, Bellingham. It doesn't matter. But if the training methods are still exactly the same as they have been, Liverpool will be in problems. They will be in major problems, because the injuries that we are picking up is becoming ridiculous. Darwin Núñez picking up little injuries towards the end of the season. Kanate picking up all of these injuries, during the season. Your Matip, your Gomez, there's too many players who are just picking up injuries purely because of, not purely, but because of potentially the training methods that we're doing, or whatever's going on behind the scenes. Again, I don't really know, but that's definitely something that I'm like, yo, we need to start looking at this, because it's just looking a bit crazy. Klopp needs to learn to rotate. If he doesn't learn to rotate, if he doesn't learn how to manage a big squad, but a squad of, again, not everyone's going to be quality, but just a squad of players where you can rotate players in and out, and it's not a major thing. It's not a big deal. It's not like, oh my goodness, we've got such and such play and the drop off is so crazy. Or you've got such and such player who hasn't played in 2 months, and you've just thrown him in. He has a crap game. He's going to be out now for the rest of, it's all of these kind of things. Klopp definitely needs to do that. Take risks in the market, 100%. I think some of the players that we bought recently, I think, personally, I just don't really think that they were ever any good, or that I'm still waiting to see with some of them. But others, not even others, just other players that we just haven't signed. I'm just like, well, you haven't signed such and such, but then you now want such and such after you've seen him play, would I say, in the Premier League or in other competitions or whatever. And I'm just like, why not take a bit more risk? I am definitely not saying let's go out there, sign every player that we think as fans are wonder kids and stuff like that. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately, because not everyone is going to be the player that you thought they were going to be. But there are some players that you look at and you think to yourself, unless they've just gone from one season being okay to meaty to okay to just amazing in the space of I think to myself, like a Caicedo or an Enzo Fernandez. I'm just like, well, you were looking at these players, you opted not to buy these players. You now want these players because you've seen what they can do at lesser clubs, or lesser clubs to us, but maybe higher than wherever they've come from. Why didn't you just go in for them first, and it would have solved / helped some of the issues that you might potentially be having? But again, I'm not saying go out there, sign every wonder kid. I'm not saying that. There are obviously some sure things that you're going to need to get, and players obviously in the right kind of age bracket, profile, etc., etc. Next up, Klopp needs to learn to be flexible. That is a must. For me, that alongside the training methods are more important to me than some of the other things on this list. If you ain't flexible, there's no point. Do you know what I mean? We saw exactly what it was like this season when he isn't flexible. The team was shit. He decided to change things up towards the end of the season. The team went on a decent run. Now, so then you're looking at it thinking, why wasn't this something? Not even forget even what the formation that we moved to. We probably could have moved. In my opinion, I don't think that the formation would have changed. In terms of, I think that we could have easily have used any formation, and we probably still would have gone on a semi kind of run like this anyway. But it's just the coincidence that we did, and obviously it ended up us being 4 points off, obviously the top four. But during the season, the flexibility. I'm not even just talking about tactically. I'm just talking about trying different players. You don't always have to try the same players all the time, especially when those players are not even performing. But then that goes back to learning to rotate, for next season, and obviously for this season. And we're going to be in the Europa League, so we're going to actually have to. That's going to be the interesting thing. How does Klopp manage the Europa League with the Premier League? Is he going to do exactly, which is what I think he's going to do? Is he just going to do what he does in the Champions League, which is you kind of just keep playing your stronger squad? Because he wants to just win, he wants to get through, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think there'll be maybe a couple players thrown into the mix, but I'm thinking in my brain that he's going to kind of just keep going strong and just hope that the players are fit enough to just be able to do this, that, and the third, and blah, blah, blah. That's what I think he's going to do, but we'll wait and see. And last but not least, The owners. The owners need to help. Do you know what I mean? They need to help a brother out a little bit. At the end of the day, it's not all Jurgen Klopp's fault. It's not. It can't always be on Jurgen Klopp. The owners do need to give a little more. But at the same time, it's funny. We heard about James Milner. Jurgen Klopp wanted to keep James Milner, and then the board stepping in to say, "Nah, that ain't happening, my bro. Like, he gotta go. He gotta go. First of all, we ain't trying to keep him on the wage bill. I don't know. Even if he was on reduced terms, the reduced terms are still not enough. And I agree with them in this case. It doesn't warrant him staying. Get him off the books completely. Let him go do whatever it is he wants to do. And then obviously you go out and then you sign whoever it is that you want to sign. So, these are the kind of things that I'm looking at. Again, guys in the comments, let me know anything that you think I should add, take away, whatever. That is just my kind of personal opinion when I was thinking about it and just running through a number of things that we potentially need in order for us to improve for next season. Those are the ones that kind of, that kind of stood out. So obviously, if we're looking, towards the formation for next season, now I know here's a lot of colors and all of that kind of stuff. So I'll try and explain as best as I can. Obviously, got the formation here. You can see anyway, 3-2-4-1. That's obviously what we've been using. Will we continue to use that? I don't know. Again, I really don't know when it comes to Jurgen Klopp. Do not be surprised if match day 1 of the Premier League, we are playing 4-3-3 again. Like, just don't be surprised. And Trent won't be inverted. It will literally be 4-3-3, DM, 2-8s, your wingers and your striker. Do not be surprised if you see that. But if we're going to use this formation, this is kind of how I was, looking at it. So you can see there, obviously, I've got the circles or the highlights around these positions because I put that there to kind of show that those are the areas, would I say, that these players, I would like them to kind of be on the pitch. Again, it's going to change in games. It's going to change, depending on the opposition and stuff like that. So this isn't set in stone, like they can only stay here, but these are the kind of positions that I was looking at. And again, like I said, Klopp does need to learn to be flexible. So I'm not going to be fussed if you play in some games a 4-3-3. I don't mind. Like, I'm not going to kill you and be like, oh, I'm not bothered. It's just when you're going to just revert back to type. No, in some games we're going to need to play 4-3-3 potentially, just because of the opposition. But in I guess the majority of the games, if this is the formation that you're looking to play this. Play this formation. You can see, obviously, I've got my wide centre backs, in kind of ahead of the middle centre back. That could change, potentially. But again, those are the kind of areas I want them on the pitch. Again, not bombing forward. So I don't want to see Robbo bombing up to help with the attack. I'm good, bro. You can do that every now and again. Obviously, if their space allows it as well, of course, you use your judgment. But I don't need you. I don't need you doing that. The team shouldn't require you to be there. I don't feel anyway. In all of the tactics that I've seen this kind of 3 at the back kind of thing implemented, I don't really feel like I need you there at all times, especially when the best teams do it. I don't really feel like I feel like I'll much prefer to see you behind the halfway line more often than not. But because you've got the quality in terms of what it's like to be in those forward areas, in those forward positions, when you are there, I'm not going to be stressing. If the situation calls for it, then hey, be my guest. But as a whole, that isn't realistically, where I want you to be. And again, for the right centre back, that's another area that I think that we kind of need to. First, we definitely need to up. I'm saying upgrade. Konate is obviously a good player and a good defender. I just want a different type of right centre back. But they can also rotate with Konate. During the season and stuff like that. But again, this comes to the fluidity, this comes to the rotation, this comes to finding the right profile. And same with the left centre back. I wouldn't sell Robbo. Keep him there. Keep him there. Of course, he'll be a good backup, especially if you then want to go to a 4-3-3. He could be a good backup because the left centre back that you might sign might not be a good fullback or wing back that you potentially want to use in those kind of games. If that's the kind of area of creation that you want to have, you might actually need Robbo. Absolutely fine. Guess what? Put him there. Put him in that position. Obviously, you got your 2 defensive midfielders. So obviously, on the right will be Trent. Again, we need to look at that area because either Klopp's going to find a replacement for Trent, or he's going to always have to revert back to a 4 at the back if Trent doesn't play, because then there's no one else to play realistically in that position. Maybe a Thiago, but then Trent's playing more inverted. Thiago can't do inverted. So you'd end up having to do what I keep saying, which is just keep it three at the back. Like just literally keep it three at the back, and then get your two defensive midfielders. So whether that's Thiago, Fabinho, Trent, just get them to drop in. So if they are going to drop in, I'm not saying Trent to drop in at right back. I'm saying drop in. One of them will have to drop in at centre back. Then you push the right centre back out to right back, instead of trying to get the defensive midfielder to push out to that side, then leaves a hole in the middle, which then becomes a little bit confusing, because if teams then try to penetrate the middle, it then leaves you in a catch-22 as to what the hell to do. Just put the right centre back to go out to right back, get one of the defensive midfielders to drop in, and then you can maybe negate it however you need to negate it, in my personal opinion. But again, it's just one of those kind of things in transition, depending on how you're going to play. Another thing as well, in this whole formation, any formation, Liverpool definitely need to learn how to play quicker. We play way too slow. It's actually boring sometimes watching Liverpool, because it's always like slow, 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 slow. But when we need a goal, it's like quick, quick, quick. I'm like, okay, this shouldn't be the mantra for when we're playing games. It should just be quick football. If you play quick football, then you'll be able to get yourselves in better positions, because the front players are always going to keep rotating and moving around and confusing the players. So if they're confusing the opposition, if they do that, perfect. But again, it just depends on how he wants them to kind of play. Obviously, in front of that, you've got the 2 8s/10s kind of thing. That kind of hybrid. It's weird. It's like a hybrid role, because it's like 8s/10s/wingers. Because they all seem, but this is why then you need really good midfield players who have probably got that engine. If they don't have it, they're going to potentially struggle, because they're going to kind of need to be able, you can see in the highlight green area, that's all their area there. They're going to need to be able to play in those kind of areas, as well as then coming out wide at times, potentially. It can't always be Trent who's going to drop out wide. Yes, Trent will potentially do that, but it's not always going to be Trent. Sometimes that right centre mid/attacking mid/whatever, they're going to need to be able to drop out wide just to be able to facilitate the attack at times. If you're then still trying to remain defensively solid, it can't always be Trent is out there, because then sometimes it creates issues in the middle of the park. And I want to be solid down the middle. I think if you're solid down the middle, you can kind of work it out wide. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those kind of things. As we know, we've seen with other teams, where they let teams have the ball out wide, because they know as long as they're solid in the middle, it doesn't matter what you do out wide. You could keep flinging in balls left, right, and centre, like what we've seen against Liverpool when we were just doing pray and cross. Like, it was just, we keep crossing the ball, but nothing's happening. Why? Because teams are like, that's fine. Keep having, Trent could do the best ball in the world. Guess what? Not going to do nothing. Why? Because we're solid in that middle. And that's all I really care about when it does come to, not all I care about, but that's one of the major things that I care about when we're talking about being defensively solid. Out wide, yes, obviously be defensive if you possibly can, but let the teams I'd rather you have the ball out wide, further away from the goal, than in the middle, where you've got a better chance of scoring. So yeah, with the 2 8, same thing. And then again, with the wingers, I mean, Diaz or whoever plays on that left side is probably going to be a lot more defensive than obviously Salah on the right hand side. So, they're going to help out potentially defensively. And then obviously you've got Cody Gakpo, who's kind of dropping into that space of striker/attacking midfielder. And then you kind of move it from there. And I think that's just how I'm kind of looking at it, for the season. Apologies if it's obviously a little bit confusing, but hopefully you kind of, at least if you got like a little gist of what I'm trying to say, is that as long as we can remain defensively solid and move a lot quicker with the ball, I feel like we will be I don't want to use the word force, but we would definitely be a lot better than we were, obviously, this season just gone. And I think with this new style, with this new tactic, I think the major thing, and again, the thing that I was talking about the most, is as long as you sign the right profile of player, instead of getting in these players that you don't even really want, you don't even really need, and you're putting yourself in a situation where you're just trying to shoehorn these players in there. Yeah, it's going to be a catch-22, kind of thing regardless. Another thing, obviously speaking about before, was obviously, sorting out this backroom staff. So, in terms of the sporting director and just everything else that's kind of going on behind the scenes, things that we're probably not really privy to, as fans. news out here. This was posted the other day by Sky Sports News. Georg Schmatt, or Schmatt, however you say it, is expected to fly to the UK at the end of this week to finalise appointment as Liverpool sporting director. Good. Let's just get it sorted. My thoughts on him in a general sense, again, until he actually gets here, we'll never really and truly know. If I'm going off previous, I'm like, don't really know about this one. It's difficult. It's a difficult one because of the clubs that he's managed. But then I also think about it. If this is the kind of guy that you're trying to get in for your club, would you be happy with it? You know, his record. I've seen people try to throw that positive swing on it, and I'm like, the thing is, I don't see a positive or negative with him. I just look at him and just think, yeah, let me just see what you do, because you're not someone that, if I'm looking at all the sporting directors in the world, your name definitely wouldn't even have come up. Like, I wouldn't even have thought about putting someone like you know, as a sporting director. Not because I think you're poor, just because there are way better ones out there who are quite specific in what they can and can't do. He has his, I guess, specialities. Whether you agree with those specialities in terms of some of the players that he's been able to sign and stuff like that, then if you agree with it, then, you know, great. If you don't, again, it's like, I can't even really, you know, rebuttal that, to be honest with you, just because I'm not really sure in terms of a sporting director whether that's the kind of direction you at the club want to go. We're looking at potentially getting him on a short-term deal and then potentially seeing, you know, again, I'm like, is that beneficial? Is that just to help out here? You know, I saw a report the other day that, you know, Joe coming in, you know, him coming in, looking at the German market. I'm just like, okay, is that where Liverpool are trying to head? We're trying to go over to that German market and trying to find players. Does he think that there's players over there who would best suit the system? Again, makes me think, Klopp, system, you're just going back to type. You know, the signs are there. The signs are there. So it just depends on whether or not, you know, he's going to act, you know, upon that. But again, sorting out all of that, the doctor situation, again, I don't really know too much about that at this current moment in time, but that needs to be sorted. You know, excuse me, the medical team, everything. I just feel like backroom staff and all of that stuff behind the actual football itself, that just needs to pattern up. Maybe Klopp needs to look at it. Obviously, he's not going to be here that long anyway, but I would have liked potentially looking at it. He changed Buvac before. I was trying to think of his name, but we changed Buvac before to then Pep Yinders. We were playing, in my opinion, better football under Buvac. And it's crazy because people say, oh, but we won all of these trophies, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's because we were playing better football. It's just because we have better players. Do you know what I mean? Look at the teams that we had prior to, say, Pep Yinders then becoming like assistant coach. Look at the teams. I feel that if Liverpool had these players under Buvac, we'd be playing way better football. Way better football. Way better football. And who knows what better football would have yielded. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But again, coincidentally, you know, Pep Yinders has been, you know, Klopp's right-hand man, and this is obviously what we've won. Would you have changed it? Probably not, because you won all of these things, but it would have been interesting at the very least to see how that would have differed if we had a better coach, in my opinion, with better players, not Emre Cans and the Clavans and the, you know, these kind of players that we had, and a Gini who just come, and Lovren in the team. You know, how about, it would have been nice to have seen Buvac with his style of play, playing with the Konates, the Van Dijks, a better Trent, a better Robbo, a Mo Salah. Like, it would have been really nice. It really, really would have been nice. But you know, it is just, you know, it is just one of those kind of things. Looking at the injury list, like I said, the training methods, the whole nine behind that. This is it's so concerning that it's borderline just embarrassing. You know, Liverpool 162 Premier League games missed this season through injury. And in my mind, I was like, I thought Chelsea had more injuries in terms of the players, but we're having injuries from some of these players. It might be the same player, like a Thiago, for example, Konate. Who else has been injured? A Matip, a Gomez. You know, Henderson's had his little niggles here and there, like Curtis Jones. Like, we're getting players who are just reoccurring injuries, or, you know, they come back from an injury, and then 2 seconds later, it's like, yeah, well, he's still not fit enough to kind of come back. It's like, well, what are you guys doing? Why is it taking so long? I remember him mentioning about Firmino. I think this was after the World Cup, I believe. I think it was after the World Cup. I remember him mentioning, oh yeah, Firmino shouldn't be out for too long, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, I didn't see Firmino for time. I was thinking, what? Like, how did that happen? Unless you diagnosed it, unless the medical team, and again, this is where we need to sort it out, unless they diagnosed it wrong, I don't understand why this guy was missing for so long. What is going on with the rehabilitation? What is going on with the methods of training? Like, what is actually going on? Because to have 162 is just not acceptable. It just isn't acceptable, man. Like, you cannot have these crazy numbers. I look at Brighton and Manchester City, 46, 49, had fantastic seasons, respective of their teams. Man City obviously winning the league, Brighton obviously getting Europa League. For them, it like for both of those teams, fantastic. Outperforming Liverpool, this season. So I'm just like, I don't really get how you guys can have this, and it's not just this season. Forget just this season. I'm talking about from last season. Talking about from the season before that. Like, it just seems to be that we are picking certain players anyway, and obviously with Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain being the main culprits, obviously, but the rest of them are just picking up too many little niggles for my liking. Too many little niggles, and I think that Liverpool just need to sort that out as soon as possible. So yeah, I think it is just one of those kind of things. But looking ahead, so people keep asking me, all right, so who would you sell? Who would you get rid of? Blah 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 blah. And I was like, it's a tricky one. So I'm gonna, before I get into some of the players that I would look to sell, it's a tricky one because I tried to who I would sell in comparison to who I think we would sell are they're not the same. The list is definitely not the same. Especially when I'm looking here now at some of these players, I'm like, yeah, the list isn't even big enough. But of course, to be realistic, for example, I would look to sell a Henderson or a Fabinho, in my personal opinion. Unless Fabinho was able to get back to that same level that I saw him at, not even in the season that we went for the quad, the season before that, and from him signing. If we go from Fabinho signing to the season before the quad, if that Fabinho came back, I'll be like, oh yeah, calm, keep him, yeah, keep him. I don't see that happening. Again, I could be wrong. It could change. Anything could happen. It's all, hindsight is a wonderful thing. I have no idea. But in my opinion, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, yeah, I would sell him. But do I think we will sell him? Unless a crazy bid comes in, I don't see Liverpool realistically selling him. Henderson, I don't see us selling him. Question marks about Thiago. It's a catch-22 when it does come to players like him. But again, that then goes to one towards the being realistic, and also then being realistic in who we're going to sign. Yeah, do you know what I mean? We could want to sell all of these players. A few months ago, people wanted to sell Curtis Jones, and now everyone's saying, "No, keep." Yeah, I'm trying to say. So it's like, I don't know. And again, I think people are more saying keep a Curtis Jones, not because even I think that they feel that he's even that good. I just think we as a club, as a fan base, we already know this club is not going to go out and actually sign the players. So there's no point in then saying, sell this guy, sell that guy, sell this guy. It just makes no sense because you're not going to get in the replacement. So you're just going to leave yourself short, and that will be more detrimental than if we just kept the players. So one of those catch-22s. But if I'm diving into it now, I'm looking at, first and foremost, we'll look at him. Kelleher. Sell, I would probably look to sell. And again, this has got nothing to do with his last game of the season. I think there's been a bit of an overreaction in both ways. I think Kelleher is a good second goalkeeper, but he is like a good second goalkeeper for a top club. So when I say the top clubs, your Liverpool, your Manchester Cities, maybe even a Chelsea, your PSGs, like if he was at one of those kind of clubs, like Bayern Munich and all those kind of things, yeah, as a second goalkeeper, yeah, that's calm. The role he then plays, I agree, kind of thing. I'm like, I like Kelleher. Do you know what I mean? He's done his thing in the cup competitions, obviously last season and stuff like that. But then I look towards this season and I'm just like, it's so weird how Klopp didn't really play you like that, especially in the FA Cup. That was weird. I didn't really understand that. Obviously, he doesn't play any league games. He played that one league game at the end of the season. So it's like, I get it from a perspective of because he's the second goalkeeper. It's difficult when your first goalkeeper is Alisson, who's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, because then he ain't going to be dropped for the important games anyway, like Premier Leagues and stuff like that. So, like it, because of his role, that's why I would sell him. Not because I think he's poor. It's just more because of his role. If you're gonna just play the games that he basically played like this season just gone, I'm like, well, what difference does it make? You're better off just getting one of the youngsters to just kind of come in and almost fill that slot, and then you're getting some money for him. But again, I'm saying this because I know our owners. I know how the club works. I know we're sell to buy, so we need money from somewhere. And he's someone that I feel like you can get some money for. I think again where the overreaction comes in is where people are like, oh, we can get this amount. Like, I'll be surprised. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. I'll be mad surprised if Liverpool were to get over 20 million for this guy. Like, I'll be super surprised. And I think the only way we would get something like that is because we're trying to overprice him. Not saying it couldn't happen, because I've seen Liverpool do deals where I'm like, how did you get that much money for Brewster, for Solanke, for Nico Williams? How did you even do it? But they done it. So that wouldn't surprise me on that side of things. But then at the same time, I would be a little bit surprised where I'm like, rah, someone paid 40 million for Kelleher. That is wild, like that is for me super wild considering how many goalkeepers are out there in the world. And I'm looking at some even in the Premier League, and I'm like, well, he would fall down the list of a lot of goalkeepers. So for you to spend that much, boy, you must be a team. You must be a Luton. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think Luton have got 40 M's to just throw away on just a goalkeeper. But again, that's just one of the positions. So I would sell him, but almost a bit reluctantly, kind of thing. If he doesn't mind though, just chilling for the same kind of role, just keep him. Just keep him. Like generally, just keep him. Next up, I got Joe Gomez. Again, this one was a little bit tricky. One, he's homegrown. So that then causes an issue. We already know about this whole homegrown crap. So that causes one issue. But then on the flip side, I'm like, we need depth anyway at centre-back. Whether you think he's that good or not, you just need the depth anyway. And if he's not going to play that many games, I'm just like, if he was a player that didn't mind, again, goes back like Kelleher, if they don't mind playing that many games in terms of they're only going to potentially play Europa League. Like, I feel like he would probably play the Europa League games, the cup games. If that's enough for him, then again, no biggie. Some players that you get who are even of the same age of a Joe Gomez, because the manager rotates even in the Premier League, they don't mind. Where Klopp doesn't do that, that's the problem. So some of these players are going to think, I need to bounce because I'm not going to play enough. Do you know what I mean? If I'm only going to play these cups, that's not enough potentially for Joe Gomez. He might not see himself as, I just want to play the cup competition. Yes, we as fans, we keep looking at it, and I've heard some people speak about it. Oh, play the kids or play whoever in the Europa League, and then play your strongest team in the thing. Yeah, you can do that. You could potentially do that, but I guarantee you're going to have some unhappy players. I can guarantee it, because certain men are not looking at it and thinking, as a player, as a footballer, I don't just want to play the Europa League. I want to play in the Premier League as well. Why can't I show that I can play in the Premier League? Why am I playing against Carvalho? That's not going to tell you that I can play against Arsenal or Tottenham or whoever. That's not going to show you anything. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So some players, I think, are going to look at it and think, I'm not really feeling that, to be honest with you. And I think he almost falls into that bracket. But I think it would take potentially a sizable bid to get rid of him. But he's a player that I would look to be trying to sell potentially. The other centre-back, Joel Matip. I just think I like Joel Matip. I think he's better than Gomez. I wouldn't mind him as cover for next season. But like everyone else, I just think with his role, he's getting on a bit with his age. He's too injury prone. I think it is probably time for him to kind of keep it moving. Again, if we can get in the reinforcements, I'm not too fussed. If we can't get in these, guys, I just want people to, disclaimer almost, I just want you to understand, this is just my preference in terms of, if you just ask me who would I want to leave the club, the players that I've just gone through now, those are the ones. I'm going to do a video, and it's coming out in the next couple of days, where I'm going to then talk about the players I would like the club to bring in. So these are just the ones I want out at this current moment in time, or I think should be leaving the football club. But Matip obviously is one of them. He's been a good servant. You know what I mean? I know he's been so ridiculed with injuries, but he's just such a, barring like obviously this season and some of the performances that he's had this season, but again, that's like everybody. as a whole, I've liked him. I've liked him as a defender. Second behind Millie in terms of like free transfers that we've had and have been really good for the club. Yeah, I like Matip, and it would be kind of sad to see him go because I'm like, what could have been if Matip wasn't so injury prone? I think that he would be the partner alongside, Virgil van Dijk, and I think Konate would be the one to be riding the bench. To be honest with you, pause. Next up, you got Simicas. Yeah, I just think he's just not good enough in a general sense. I think he has qualities. He does have qualities that are different to a Robertson, but I just think that if you get a bid for this guy, just take the bid. And because I want to bring in a left-sided centre back, just take the bid. Take the bid. I think we'll get more than what we paid for him. So, I can't see why not. I can't see why that wouldn't be something that you wouldn't do. Can't even say he's really been a good servant. Excuse me. Rarely really played in it. I remember his first season. I forgot about him until the following season. Yeah, I just get get rid. Get rid as soon as possible. Looking here, these are players who are coming back from loan. Conor Bradley. There's been a talk there. I've done a video recently on Conor Bradley. Speaking about whether or not he's ready to come back into the first team. Again, it depends on what the role is. You've still got Calvin Ramsey there. We're looking potentially at new right centre backs. Are we then even going to need a right back? If we do need a right back, can he fill in other positions? Watch the video, guys, if you haven't already, where I speak about where he can and can't play. He's a tricky one. He's probably he would obviously, he's not coming in to start or anything like that. He would be potentially a good backup to potentially have if you're not going to go out and sign an out and out right back. He probably would be. He's a better option than a Calvin Ramsey, in my opinion, anyway. So do you keep him? Potentially, he might want to look to go out on loan again. It just then depends on whether or not how Klopp sees him. Is he then the one that you use at right back when we are playing in the Europa League? So different to a Kelleher or a Gomez, I don't think he's not going to moan, in my opinion, about that role. He's not going to moan if he's not playing Premier League games, if he's playing the cup games, for example. Because that's obviously where he's at in his development. So I don't see him having a major issue. So I think, someone like him, potentially you could keep. I only put him up here as I wouldn't necessarily sell him unless you're signing an out-and-out right back. I'd probably look to potentially loan him to a better team than Bolton next season to see how he fares and then go from there. But I'm on the edge with him. I'm not actively trying to sell him. If a bid was to come in, though, I might have to start entertaining it, but that bid would have to be pretty decent. But in terms of keeping him, I'm probably leaning more towards keeping him and just playing him in those, as I say, Europa or the FA Cup, Carabao Cup and stuff like that, and then going from there. And then, and to be honest, if if Klopp trusts him that much, then maybe, try him in the Europa League and then let's see what level he's at. Do you get what I mean? Like we're gonna need, it's almost like you're gonna need rotation for the rotation anyway. So, he might be one of those, he might fall into that third rotation kind of thing. Another player, obviously on loan, Tyler Morton, the one I keep telling you, the prodigal son of Jurgen Klopp. Klopp spoke so highly of him. I think we gave him a new deal as well. Do I see him leaving? I don't know. Again, he falls into that bracket where he's the rotation of the rotation. So again, Europa League, even if he doesn't start in Europa League, which I think he probably would, I think he would potentially start in the Europa League. But even if he doesn't, he'd be the bench option as opposed to in the Premier League. He's not even going to be on the bench kind of thing. That's where you get the other players, but he'd be the bench option at minimum for the Europa League. If not, he's then starting. So again, homegrown, young player. I think he falls into that Conor Bradley role in terms of he's not going to be mad, in my opinion, at playing those kind of competitions. So do you just keep him around for that fact because we might not get in the amount of players that we want to get in? Again, I'm leaning more towards, because I know this football club, I'm just leaning more towards just keep the guy. Like I said, he'd be, in my opinion, a good third rotation type of player at minimum anyway, and then see how he goes from there. Like I said, I don't see us doing crazy deals like that this summer. I'd just be super surprised, if we did. Last but not least, there's been a lot of talk about this guy recently, Fabio Carvalho. There's been a lot of talk. Big up Roms, I know that's his guy. Why did you sign him? You know what I mean? Like, why did you sign this guy? Like, he must have thought that he could do the same thing as an Elliot, which is you're going to play one position, which is completely different to the position that I see you in, and we just hope that it's going to bang in some way, shape, or form. It hasn't really worked out this season. And for Fabio Carvalho, I do feel a little bit sorry for him. Fabrizio Romano put out, I think it was yesterday, speaking about Carvalho. The news revealed today, understand apparently there's a Champions League club who've already started talks with Liverpool to sign Carvalho on a permanent deal. Liverpool are reluctant to sell, but the possibility of a buyback may be considered as a reasonable outcome given the player's desire to play. Again, Klopp has spoken about Carvalho and said, yeah, in training, he's one of the best trainers, blah, blah, blah. And I posted this out on Twitter. And my issue with the situation, my gripe with the situation is you signed a player who plays in a specific position, right? A position that you do not have at this football club. So he plays in that number 10 behind the striker. No problem. He was fantastic. I think he won Young Player of the Year, I think, in the Championship. I can't remember if he was in the team of the season. I'm not 100% sure. Played fantastically well for Fulham in that position. In that position, that's where he shined, right? You sign him, no problem. I've got no problem getting in youngsters who I think anyway are good, but also the youngsters who are actually good. Not even just because I think they're good. Carvalho was a youngster who was really, really good, and a lot of teams were looking at him. You signed him, not a problem. You don't want to play him at the beginning, still not a problem. Give him some time to acclimatize. He's still young. He can't just walk. He's not a Bellingham who's going to walk into this team at 19, 20 years of age and just be a part of the team. He's not that level. Do you get what I mean? Which is fine. Absolutely fine. Let's drip feed him. But don't stall his development. So you've seen what he can do in the first 6 months up until the January transfer window. You get to that point, you've looked at him now for long enough to kind of know, he's not really in my plans like that. And I'm not realistically going to play him. Even in dead rubbers, even for 5-10 minutes, whatever, I'm just not going to play him. Okay, cool. You then get the January transfer window, you don't loan him out. Okay, cool. Again, I'm reluctantly with you, Klopp. You know what I'm saying? I'm reluctantly with you. All right, cool. Say no more. We passed the January transfer window. Not a problem. He's still here at the football club. You're saying he trains well. He does all of these things. We don't know what else is going on behind the scenes, but all of that stuff, no problem. I'm with you. You get to the end of the season, you're still not even playing this guy. You don't even drip him you don't even give him minutes, like hardly ever give him minutes. But you keep coming out and telling everybody that he's training really, really well. Like someone needs to explain that one to me. I saw someone mention, people want Klopp to be ruthless. Now he's been no. Let's first of all let's debunk that. This ain't got nothing to do about being ruthless. This is just almost borderline stupidity. You have a player who plays a certain position that you do not have at the football club. You sign that player, even though of that fact. No problem. You then try to shoehorn him into another position that's alien almost to him, and pray that it kind of works. You realize very quickly it's not going to work. He still needs a bit more time to get acclimatized. You then realize once you've gotten to that January period, he's not really acclimatizing as quickly as I thought, which again is fine. Not everybody's going to bang the second that they come. You then don't give him any football, hardly any football that you're giving him, and then you don't loan him out. So you're stalling the player's development. What was the point in signing the guy in the first place then? Was it to just make a flip? Was this really one of those, I just need to make a flip? Like, if he does bang, then we just keep him. If he doesn't bang, we can sell him for more than what we got. Was it literally that? Because that's what I'm looking at this current moment in time. Because I'm just like, it just doesn't make any sense that you just stalled a player's development for a whole year, and what takes the biscuit is then you still keep coming out and telling everybody, but he's training well. That for me is starting to piss me off, because I'm just like, are you trying to patronize us? Like, do you think we're dumb? Like, I don't really get it. But again, that's just Klopp, and that's just how he is. Now, like I said, there's other players, obviously, Ox, Naby, Milner, Firmino, they're all going anyway, so I didn't put them up. Fabinho, Hendo, Thiago, I don't see them leaving. You still need some type of depth, so it'll be unrealistic of me to think that they would leave without them, unless we brought some. I reckon we'd bring someone in first before even considering those players to kind of leave, even though I know people want them to leave. Hence the reason why I'm not really going to talk about them in terms of exits. Like I said, you still need the depth anyway. But those are the kind of players that I'm looking at potentially, who could leave. Matip, Simicas, Gomez, Kelleher, and then obviously Morton and Connor Bradley potentially stay, and then Fabio Carvalho. Fabio Carvalho, I think he should just go. I think Liverpool should just do what Fabrizio said, which is just insert the buyback clause. Just like if he bans somewhere else, then you can obviously just almost like what Man City have done with Romeo Lavia. Like just do it on that kind of basis, because otherwise, I just think it's just going to be a bit of a waste of time for both player and the club. And then obviously the last thing I wanted to quickly just touch on is obviously John Henry. I'm not going to dive into this too much. I'll let everyone else kind of do that. I'll let everyone's kind of spoken on it. He does need to do more. As an owner, you just need to do more, bro. Like, you just need to give Klopp a bit more wiggle room. So, like, when we go back to what I spoke about, in my checklist, take more risks in the transfer market. I think that's what he's going to have to do. Whether he likes it or not, whether he thinks he needs to or not, he needs to. Do you know what I mean? Like, he needs to. Otherwise, what you may potentially have is that Liverpool will fall very, very short next season, and next season won't be deemed, well, not even when we it just won't be that successful. It will be probably an improvement upon this season, but in a general sense, I don't necessarily think it's going to take us back to that point where we want to be. And then the problem that you then have is it starts to trickle over. I know people keep telling me about, if we finish fifth though, we still get Champions League. I can't lie. Like, first of all, that's just the value in the Champions League, because that's just embarrassing. You finish fifth and you still get Champions League. Like, that's just dead. But secondly, it's just more about I'm not aiming to finish fifth. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like that shouldn't be something that we're aiming for. Like, you shouldn't look at it and be like, oh, but we can still finish. I don't care. Like, that should look at the top two. That is it. Those are the only top two, and I'm not talking about second. Do you know what I mean? Like, but top two are the positions that you need to be looking at. And if you are going to finish like a third or fourth, then that points gap needs to be different. But that's why I think Liverpool are going to finish next season anyway, is between third and fifth. I just think it will be an improvement that we might not be as far as we were, this season. But he needs to do more. He needs to allow Klopp to not necessarily even pick the players. I think he needs to take that away from Jurgen Klopp completely. Klopp can have a say and then go out and get the recruitment team to then find that type of player. I don't think Klopp needs to be looking at these kind of players and saying, yeah, boom, 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 I want this guy, I want that guy, and da-da-da-da-da. I prefer not. I prefer if we have the recruitment team for a reason. I think go out and, utilize them as best as possible, but give them a bit more wiggle room, man. You hear what I mean? Give them some more money to spend, because if you don't do it now, and he's all about money. We all know he's all about money. If you don't do it now, boy, that investment that you have, that you're saying is worth whatever it is, 5 billion or whatever it is that they're saying that Liverpool are worth, that's going to go down very quickly. That's definitely going to go down. And then you're going to leave yourself in a pickle where all that hard work that you put into the football club to get us to this level alongside Jurgen Klopp, all that work that you've done, now we're almost starting back to where we were when not when Klopp came in, maybe the 17-18 season. You're almost going back to that, where you was at the top. So how do you then go back 3 seasons? Like, and it's going to take a couple of seasons, and all these other teams are improving their squad. The Newcastles of this world, they can outspend you anyway. So if they can already outspend you, eventually they'll get to a point where they're doing better than you. Like this season, Arsenal are outspending you. Why? Because they think, they can see that if you don't spend the money, then this is we're going to be left behind. So the owners are like, we'd rather go big now, go big or go home. Effectively, is what these clubs are doing. Ten Hag has spoken about Manchester United investing in the team. If they don't spend, you're going to fall behind. Again, go big or go home. If you don't go big at some point, like we did when we got, I know obviously facilitated with the Coutinho deal, but if like we did with the Van Dijks, the Alissons, the Fabinhos, like if you don't go big at some point, and I think this is the time now for Liverpool to go big. If you don't do it, you're just going to fall behind. So I'm not going to go too deep into John Henry, because like I said, I'll leave that for everybody else. And all the other people who have stronger feelings on the situation than I do. But that's kind of my Liverpool improvements. How I think Liverpool can improve next season. An early prediction, I would obviously do it like a proper prediction come the end of the transfer window. If I'm looking at everything now, how the club is, unless things change, like I said, Liverpool are looking at that 3rd to 5th kind of position, because I think that other clubs are going to improve a lot more than we will. And other clubs, in my opinion, are already like Arsenal, City. Arsenal, City, I think, are ahead of us in terms of they do not require such a major rebuild, whereas we require quite a lot for us to get to their level, and then obviously to then try and still get to, you know, a Manchester City level. And then Newcastle, again, Newcastle, if you've got Eddie Howe as manager and he's able to coach, you know, certain players to the level that they're at, then he's not even going to require such a major, you know, a major investment in terms of how many players he's going to want in. So even with Champions League football, you know, all of these kind of things that you got to think about. De Zerbi, you know, there's so many things. You know, there's so many better coaches, in my opinion, you know, than Jurgen Klopp, that you're looking at and you're thinking, boy, Unai Emery, I think he's a better coach. Jurgen Klopp's a better manager because he has a full package about him. But if you're just talking about coach tactically, there's so many who are just better than him. So if they're able to get some of these players playing at this kind of level, it could get sticky. But, you know, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But guys, long video. I know. Big up anyone who obviously stayed right until the end. Catch this in the gym while you're doing your workout. Listen to this in the gym. Skip to whatever parts that you need to skip to. But let me know in the comments, what do you guys think in terms of Liverpool and improving, should I say, next season? Where do you think we could improve? How do you think we will improve? And even with all the improvements that I have here, I still don't see us winning the league title. So where do you think, even with the improvements that you guys think that we should have, do you think Liverpool will finish? That's the end of the video. I'm G. Make sure you smash a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I am out.